Yeah.
Wow, that didn't take long. I just said it. You understood it already. Normally, I have to explain that. That one person in the back that might not know what that's about. Say that we are being trapped into thinking that the solution is jumping from the left to the right, or jumping from Republicans to the Democrat Party, and back to the Republican Party, as though it made any difference, when we realize that the real enemy to the Republic and to our freedom is not communism, fascism, socialism, all these isms. It's collectivism. That's the basic word. It's this concept that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number. That's the enemy right there. And you find that in both the left and the right. Communists believe that, the Nazis and fascists believe that, the Democrats believe that, Republicans believe that. I mean, many of them, not say all, the rank and file. Interestingly enough, the rank and file, those of you Democrats and those of you Republicans who are here don't believe that, but the leadership does. And we come to that in a moment, how to replace the leadership, but really the key to the solution is. We must not be trapped into this left-right paradigm, because our enemy has used that against us. I'll just give you a little inkling to that. There is a well-known author's name is Carroll Quigley, Professor Carroll Quigley, who used to be a professor at Georgetown University. He was one of the professors that William Clinton studied under when he was there as a student. Clinton thought highly of him. He gave honorable mention to his Professor Quigley in several of his public speeches. He said how much he owed to Professor Quigley for shaping his political views and so forth. Quigley is an interesting person. How to condense this down to 3 minutes? Let's see. Quigley was considered to be the historian of one of the greatest conspiracies the world has ever known. I call it the Rhodesian group because it was a group that was financed and begun by Cecil Rhodes. That goes way back over 100 years ago. Cecil Rhodes, as you know, is one of the wealthiest men of all history. And what you may not know is that he devoted all of his vast fortune upon his death in a series of wills, 7 wills, to create a secret society. And Professor Quigley was the historian of that secret society, and he told how it came into being, how the money was used. And by the way, the Rhodes Scholarships are just one little piece of that. Rhodes Scholarships are generally considered to be a recruiting funnel for this secret society, how to bring people into the hardcore. And of course, William Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, in case you missed that point. So anyway, Quigley wrote about all of this, and in the course of one of his books called Tragedy and Hope, Quigley, who himself was a collectivist of the highest order, and had no problem with this secret society, he said he had been given access to its private papers for many years, and he said, I have no aversion to it or its goals. He said, the only thing I object to is the fact that it now wishes to remain secret. He felt that their accomplishments were so great that now they should boast about them and bring it out into the open. That was his only point of disagreement. Well, anyway, in this book, Quigley says, how do we, who run the world, how do we let the American people and the people in all of the so-called democratic countries of the world continue to think that they have control over their own political destiny while we actually rule it? How do we let them think that they're ruling when we are doing it? Because we must let them think that, otherwise they become unruly. So, he said the answer is simple in this book, Tragedy and Hope. He said, what we need to do is give them a choice of 2 political parties. And we let them think they're battling against each other. And the parties will disagree on some minor issues here and there, and there are a lot of difference in rhetoric and personality and imagery. But when it comes to the important issues, and he identified what they were, the important issues were national policy. In other words, the creation of a new world order based on the model of collectivism, the abandonment of sovereignty at each nation's level. Those are the important issues, he said. The establishment of global collectivism, that's the important issue. Let them fight out these other things. And then they'll have 2 parties who will control them both, he says. Get it?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew you got it because you already had it when I announced what I was going to say. But for that person back in the corner, I should say, that's what we're dealing with. That's the left-right paradigm today. And thank God for this Tea Party. I'm here to tell you, because you are not falling for the left-right paradigm. Next topic. Next trap. Rigged voting machines. Nobody's talking about that today. They went through it during the election. We thought that George Bush stole the elections. Well, he did. He didn't steal them, but it was stolen for him. Those machines are still in place. The people that rigged them are still in place. And that issue is not going to go away until you and I do something about it. In fact, that is really an extension of the Quigley formula, as I call it. That's one of the methods by which this elite group allows the masses to think that they're participating in their own political destiny, when in fact they are not. Be aware, that is a trap. The time will come when we must do something. I don't have a solution right now. In fact, there are no solutions to any of these problems until we get that gang, most of that gang, out of Washington and replace the people. Years ago, our company, American Media, distributed by the Reality Zone, created a video documentary on this topic. If you haven't seen it, please look it up. Come to realityzone.com. The documentary is called Invisible Ballots. Trap number 3. What if the elections are stolen? Then what? Is it time then to revolt? Is it time to hit the streets with pitchforks and clubs? What is it? A lot of people are talking that way, aren't they? It's time that we let them know we're not going to take it anymore. That's what they say. Well, what does that mean, you're not going to take it? You are, but you've been taking it all these years. Now what's happened all of a sudden? What do you mean you're not going to take it? Well, we're going to do something. What? We're going to show up. What? I don't know. We're just going to do something. And the idea is there's going to be a massive revolt. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another trap. Think about it. There is a difference between a revolt and a revolution. Big difference. What's the difference? Well, revolts always fail. Revolutions sometimes succeed. So what's the difference? Well, a revolt is that mad, passionate outpouring of emotion when people have had it. Like the guy says in Network, he says, I ain't going to take it no more. Fed up. Not going to take it anymore. Right? And they just show up on the street with clubs and whatever they've got. Maybe they've got some rifles, who knows. They show up. And there's a mass of people, and the rulers can't deal with them. There are just too many of them. That's a revolt. Revolts will last and succeed for maybe a day or 2 or 3, a week at the most, like the Hungarian revolt. And finally, they run out of food, they run out of energy, they run out of the few bullets they had, and such as in the Hungarian revolt. The Soviets just waited for them to get tired. I think they cut their water off, and after a few days they got pretty thirsty. The revolt was over. The city was ringed by iron, they call it the iron ring of tanks. The military was waiting, and then they just moved in and crushed the revolt. Revolts are always crushed. Why? Because they have no leadership, they have no organization, they have no funding, no communication, no strategy. They have nothing except this passion. That's not enough. What's a revolution? Well, it has all of the things I just said that revolts don't have. They do have leadership, strategy, organization, funding, communications, training. The American Revolution had all of those things. Remember, this was not a revolt. Our nation was not created by a revolt. It was created by a revolution of 13 governments. They were already in place. They had military. They had leadership. They had training, they had methods of communication, they had armories full of ammunition and cannons, they had courts, they had legislatures, they were 13 governments. You cannot win against such a military forces as the United States federal government, or even a state government, or even a city government, if you don't have those things. So before you get into this trap and say, we'll just have a revolt, we'll go out into the streets. You know what? These people, these elitists, want that. Of course they do. In fact, I am of the opinion that some of the people calling the most loudly for a revolt are actually there as agents provocateurs, the trigger. Why do they want that? Because they want it to fail. They want to see who the potential leaders are. They want to see who the people are that they're going to have to deal with anyway. But bring them out in this situation, they can arrest them, pick them up, and take them to these retirement camps. Prepared. Okay. Now, what's the next trap? Finally, the fourth one is fear is a tactic. Creation of credible enemies. You know, Plato said it so well. He said the tyrant is always stirring up some war or other so that the people may require a leader. Well, have you ever wondered why they have so many crises? I mean, war is the active word, isn't it? We got a war against terrorism, a war against pornography, a war against crime, war against you name it. Everything is a war. And you know that just fits into the strategy of our rulers very well. And we have to be alert to the fact that some of these crises are deliberately created or at least aggravated by the very people that we are resisting. That's a huge trap, because if we had another major, quote, terrorist attack, do you know that would be the end of most opposition to what's going on today? People would buckle under. I mean, if we lost Cincinnati, boom, big cloud of smoke. Who would dare stand up and say, liberty? No, everybody would say, security. That's the way the human mind works. So that's something to be very much aware of. Not that we can do anything about it, but if it should happen, please, God, let us not fall into that trap, buckling under and just accepting whatever the rulers and judges we now must do. And finally, the fifth trap, the assault on our health and our mental capacity. I'm talking about modern delivery systems for such things as vaccines, food and water supply additives, prescription drugs, chemicals sprayed on crops and in the oceans, and aerosol spraying of the atmosphere, now called geoengineering. You may have heard it called chemtrails. We just finished a documentary, I guess it was shown here somewhere yesterday, called What in the World Are They Spraying? I do not have time to go into all of that, but they are spraying. This is not just vapor trail, these are not just ice crystals, and we can prove that. This is not the place to do it, but if you're in doubt about that, please check with me afterwards. I'll bore you for an hour on why it's not just ice crystals, and we can show you. These are toxic chemicals, mostly aluminum, barium, and strontium. There are other things too, but we know for sure that. And they're coming down precisely the same areas in the same time frame as this excessive spraying that you've seen. These chemicals are highly toxic to human life, to plants, to wildlife, to crops, and so forth. And in many cases, they're causing the soil to shift toward the alkaline stage, at least in the Western Hemisphere, where it's traditionally very acidic. So it's becoming less and less acidic, which means that native, normal crops are not producing anymore. And wouldn't you know, there are companies that just happenstantially come up with genetically engineered seeds that will grow in these soils, which means now you have to buy forevermore your seeds from these companies. I mean, this rabbit hole is so deep, you cannot believe it. But anyway, if you're interested, please see that video, and we'll have more to follow on that topic later. Now, these chemicals that are being delivered to the population in all these methods that I'm describing, they have certain characteristics in common. One, they're funded primarily by tax dollars. They generate incredible profits to their makers. Increasingly, we are forced to accept them. They are highly toxic. They lower resistance to disease. They shorten lifespan. They cause infertility. Some of them induce passivity. Some of them induce suicidal or homicidal impulses. And most important of all, we are told that they are good for us. You find all of those characteristics in these chemicals. Now, why is this on my list of traps? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we're chemically poisoned and mentally altered, we cannot restore the system. All right, now we finally come to the solution.